I have a very loving husband who is the primary caregiver for my children.
I love that.
He has a job. He works 7 to 4 p.m. So I don't have to do a lot of the day-to-day shuttle busing that comes with having children because he's taken that on, which is amazing. And I'm so grateful. And I would absolutely not be where I am today without Ted.
I cannot share this sentiment enough with you, but I think that one of my greatest professional hacks is having a spouse and a partner who supports me, who it really is just my kind of equalizer, right? The balance at home. And I feel like that is sometimes lost on folks, is the importance of having a partner who does support you in all facets, right? It's not just somebody who's going to be your cheerleader, but creating this space and the time for you to prioritize what's important to you professionally as well.
For sure.
Welcome to the She's So Sweet podcast, where we interview accomplished women who have worked their way to the C-suite. I'm your host, Kristi Faltorusso, Chief Customer Officer and award-winning customer success executive. I am so excited to introduce today's guest. We've got Rachel Krug, CEO of Virtual Field, on with us today. Rachel, hi, welcome to the show.
Hi, Kristi. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so excited for our conversation. And I think what really tweaked me outside of all of our prep and our conversation, though, is your props for our conversation. So we're gonna get into that. So I think this is a good segue. Before we get into all the great stuff, I would love if you could tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and share a little bit about Virtual Field.
Sure thing. So I am the CEO of Virtual Field. In this role, I am responsible for the overall general management of the company, the P&L, managing the board, investing in the team, running my leadership team. And Virtual Field is an exceptional eye exam experience. We do visual field, color vision, and pupillometry exams in this portable patient-friendly headset. We work with optometrists and ophthalmologists in the United States and Canada. We have roughly 2,000 customers. And we are growing very rapidly. So it's an exciting time to be at the helm of this company.
So Rachel, I got to ask, I did work in an ophthalmologist's office when I was in college. So I know how to do some testing and stuff like that. Does this replace the machine that you would look into where they change the lenses and it's lens 1, lens 2, A, B? Is this a replacement for all that?
That's exactly right. So we are replacing what's called a tabletop visual field, which is a large box-like structure that the patient has to physically...
Yes, you have to uncomfortably place your chin in.
Wear an eye patch, and it takes a long time. So this is a much faster, easier, more portable method of doing the exam just as accurately.
Wow. Okay. All right. So you're the CEO. Are you also the founder?
I am not. I was hired in February 2023. The company was founded by a doctor, Dr. Mark Haruni, out of Brooklyn Eye Center. And he is a doctor. He wanted to practice medicine. So he handed over the company at that time.
That's awesome. And so this is pretty disruptive. How is it being adopted in the field? Just because I'm so curious.
Yeah, the adoption has been overwhelmingly positive. I'm sure you're familiar with diffusion of innovation and the adopter curve. We're past the early adopters. When the company started, people would buy Virtual Field because they thought it was so cool and the latest technology. But now we're into the majority, and we get questions that are much more involved in how do I fit this into my existing workflow? And so we know that we're getting into the majority. Again, we have around 2,000 customers. We are the market leader in this space. So it's, again, a really exciting time to be bringing Virtual Field to eye care practices.
That's so interesting. Okay, so one more question on this, and then we'll get to some good stuff because I know our audience. But I'm super interested here. So what are the reasons why someone wouldn't buy this? Because to me, this would feel like a no-brainer. It's a better end-user experience for the patients. It seems like it's going to give better, more accurate results to the doctor. Why wouldn't somebody go and get this?
I think this is a common struggle with any technology company, and certainly something that I've sold against in the past as a head of sales. It's really just the status quo, and people in general don't love change. So it's not necessarily I agree. I think it is faster, easier, saves time. Is our customers tell us it's the highest ROI instrument in their office. So there really aren't, great reasons other than I have a tabletop, it works, and why change? And I don't think that's unique to Virtual Field. I've certainly experienced selling against the status quo at other companies as well.
Okay, very good. Well, listen, that's super cool. I might have some other questions offline to ask you because now I'm like, I want to go down this path of like hardware, software. So I can like really geek out with you on this. But I know our listeners are here to learn more about you and not necessarily the product. So I always start my questions because I'm always interested. I like to assume, and I know assumptions are a horrible idea. So I always say, like, I always assume that this wasn't your dream job. Like when you were a little girl, like you weren't like, I'm going to be the CEO of Virtual Field. Like obviously it didn't even exist. This wasn't a problem. So when you think back to little Rachel, what did little Rachel want to be when she grew up?
So I'd say, I've always had an inner nerd about me. So when I was a little girl, I actually wanted to be an astronomer. I would look up at the stars every night and think about how vast the universe was. And I was inspired by people like Carl Sagan, which led me to attend Cornell University, where he taught. He was no longer alive when I went there, but he certainly inspired me. And by going to Cornell, that certainly set me up to be where I am today.
All right. So where did this segue happen? Because you went, I mean, like this sounded like it hung on for a bit, right? Like I think some of our guests are like, yeah, I wanted to be a doctor. And then like by the time they were 17, it was like, that was no longer a thing. They got a paper cut once, saw blood, and they were like, no, thank you. So you actually went as far as like going to college still with this interest.
Yes.
So, okay. So you're in college now, you're in, what happened?
So I started to take college level physics, which turns out is really very challenging, and ended up shifting my major in college from astronomy to sociology. And as a sociology student, I got a job as a research assistant on a project on older adults' health and happiness when they were living at home and aging in place or living in a local facility for older adults. And I started as an interviewer going out in the field, collecting data. Then I did the data entry, and then I progressed to do the analysis of the data. So I really learned the end-to-end research process, and that sparked an interest in public health. So after Cornell, I went to Columbia University to study public health, took a ton of data analysis classes, really loved the quantitative side, and then got a job as an analyst after that degree in public health and worked in progressively responsible roles in business for about a decade before finally getting back to this role at Virtual Field, which blends that degree in public health with that decade-long career of progressively responsible roles. So it certainly wasn't a linear journey, but I think it all hangs together. And I've certainly built up a number of skills along the way.
So I don't think I've ever had a guest who's had a linear path. But my favorite thing though is when something that somebody had an interest in early kind of morphed into what they're doing now. And so there's still some aspects of it that are kind of still part of your day-to-day now. So I love that has come full circle for you. Yeah. But I obviously realize you've already talked about some of these like pivotal moments in your career, right? We've talked about these shifts in college and then some of the roles that you've taken on. But I want you to reflect back for a minute because I'm so interested in understanding, like, if you had to think about your career trajectory, what are some of the real pivotal moments that you feel like contributed to where you are today?
Sure. I think when I started in the business world, one of my first roles in business was as an analytics manager on a new ventures team at the company Constant Contact. And we conceptualized, validated, and launched Constant Contact's tool for Facebook advertising, which grew from 110 beta users to 5,000 customers in 3 months. So when I think about...
Okay, that's crazy.
When I think about, and as the analytics resource, I was finding the ideal customer in a larger group of Constant Contact customers. I was supporting marketing with positioning and messaging. So I really had my hands on all of it. And it was so exciting to see that kind of rapid growth. And that was, I would say, a not necessarily pivotal, but foundational moment that got me hooked on this idea of growth as a career.
Okay, so then where did that take you? What was the next big shift? But I mean, honestly, that story, Constant Contact, is crazy. I feel like I used their product what feels like an eternity ago when I was in marketing.
Yeah.
So that's a crazy, wild story of growth in such a short period of time. But now, what was the next thing? I'm sure there was another pivotal moment, because again, that still didn't bring you to where you are today.
That's correct. And I'd say from there and from that point on, I really wanted, my career goal was to be a VP of growth. So after that experience, that is what I started to work towards. I went with my boss from Constant Contact to another company called Right Networks, where I held a couple of progressively responsible roles. I ran the marketing team there. And then we acquired a business called Transaction Pro, which I ran as general manager. But in terms of pivotal, I would say the step from director to VP, which I took after that GM role, I got a job as a VP of growth at business.com, was probably the hardest breakthrough to go from director to VP. And then once I got the VP of growth role, it was great. I loved working on acquisition. I had sales, marketing, and customer success. I partnered very closely with the chief revenue officer. We were a tag team, him being really great on the phone and me being really awesome at the operational side of things. And so I'd say that experience at business.com really got my hands on the whole revenue function. I was a senior leader at the company, and I helped the company position itself for a sale to Centerfield Media.
So I tell folks this all the time, and we've got an audience here that is a lot of aspiring leaders, or leaders who are looking to take their career to the next level. I have always said that the biggest jump, at least what it felt like to me, was going from director to VP.
Yes.
So what is it about that you feel like made that such a big jump?
Yeah, it was really challenging. I was a director of marketing, but there was no VP of marketing. I was reporting to a VP of sales. So in many ways, I felt like I was doing VP level work, head of work, but that was the one job that I really had to do before I got it. And I think that concept for a younger listener is really important. Sometimes you have to put in the work and be at that level before you're going to get the title. And in particular for the VP title, I had to take on things like a P&L as a GM without a VP title before I got hired as a VP. So really being willing to do that level of work and take on that responsibility, and know that the title will follow. Maybe not at the same company. Maybe you're building skills at your current company and you'll go find the VP level job at the next company like I did. But being willing to put in the work and learn kind of what that level of responsibility means.
Yeah, I echo all of that. So let's take a step back here now. So obviously we've talked about these like pivotal decisions that you've made and moments that, took place in your career. But I want to shift for a second, because I also know that, career trajectories, right? And like in a journey like yours, we've talked about this already. It's not linear.
Yes.
And we also know that there are never careers without obstacles.
Right.
So when you think back, right, what are some of those real battle scars? What are the challenges or obstacles that you feel like you had to face or overcome throughout your professional career?
Yeah. So one obstacle that I'd love to share is actually deeply personal. So in May of 2020, which is right after COVID happened, my daughter started to develop a problem swallowing. It was a problem that needed to be worked up and diagnosed. And it actually turned out she was having that problem swallowing because she has a right aortic arch, which had created a vascular ring, which was surrounding her esophagus and trachea, making it hard to swallow and hard to breathe. So very fortunately, there are two surgeons in the United States who can perform the surgery on a vascular ring. One happens to work in Boston. So I live in the Boston area. I feel very fortunate that we were close by and we were able to book surgery for her in July of 2020. But certainly needing to take time off to support that diagnosis process, to support the surgery, and then to support her during early COVID as a vice president who was also managing counseling, consoling a team that was very much grieving in other ways because people were losing family members and nobody knew what was going on, really was a lot all at the same time. But very, very fortunately, Business.com and my manager, Wayne, were super supportive. They were always asking how she was. They gave me the time that I needed, which was amazing. So we were able to overcome that challenge through the support of work and, of course, the support of my husband and immediate family members.
Well, I'm so sorry to hear that you guys had to go through that. How's your daughter now?
She's great. It's a one-time surgery. She gets monitored, but we are past that. She's 12 now. She was 8 at the time. So doing great. But it's amazing how impactful modern medicine and surgery can be. Yeah. And the fact that she could have that surgery as quickly as she did, and we identified the issue as quickly as we did, is still something that I'm just very grateful for. There are cases, because this problem is so rare, there are cases where it takes years to diagnose it, and she was fortunate enough to have it diagnosed in months.
Wow.
Yeah.
And this just did the symptom, they just all of a sudden just popped up, and so she just started having this experience?
Yes.
And is that normal? Is that typically how it happens?
Yeah, so the vascular ring was always there, but she had a growth spurt. And we also, in addition to our careers not being linear, humans grow in a nonlinear way. Growth spurts are a real thing. So she had a growth spurt. So all of a sudden it got too tight. And at first she had trouble swallowing, and then she started having trouble breathing. That was honestly the scariest.
That's so scary. Yeah.
We were able to accelerate her surgery once that happened. It had been scheduled for August. We were able to accelerate it to July. And again, very fortunate to live in the Boston area where there was a surgeon to perform it.
I mean, that is definitely a challenge to overcome. So
yes.
How has that changed your focus on family versus work? And because obviously, yes, you had to navigate this while you're working this company through this time as a leader. I mean, I can't imagine what you were navigating personally. Obviously, your daughter was the one going through this, but as a mom and a leader in all of these things, I know that the weight of being a parent is on you.
Yes.
You're carrying all of this, but obviously something like that changes a lot for you and how you think about work and your family. So what residual impact did that have on you professionally?
Yeah, I think as terrible as COVID was, and we also lost people in my family from COVID.
Sorry.
It has been a blessing in that I, for the most part, have worked from home since that time. And so that has honestly unlocked a lot of family time that I didn't have previously. For the better part of 8 years, would work till, because I live in Boston, I'd work till 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock at night to miss rush hour, drive home. I would have missed dinner. It's time to put the kids to bed. So I had very little time I have 2 daughters, with my daughters until COVID, when now I can step out for dinner for 45 minutes and resume work in the evening if I'm doing evening work, or I can be the mommy bus, I call it, and take my daughters to hockey practice. And, it's a 20-minute round trip. So it's not necessarily, and it's in the evening. So I'm not necessarily stuck in an hour of traffic in the morning and an hour in traffic in the evening. So even those 2 hours back has been amazing. And fortunately, definitely an event like that makes you have perspective and think, but also fortunately I've had the ability to work from home since then. And it's been amazing for that reason. Still, as a CEO, you can imagine you're very focused on work. I'm very committed to work. So my priorities are those two things, my family and work. And unfortunately, for better or worse, sometimes my friends get the short end of the stick, but they're very understanding. And I'll typically text them. I have a group of friends in the area from high school. I'll text them. I'll let them know, hey, I'm kind of going undercover for the next 6 weeks. And they respect that. They know I have a demanding job that I enjoy. They know I have a family. And it's great to have people who are available when I'm able to see them, and very understanding when I'm not. And I've been friends with them for a long time, so I'm very fortunate to have that.
I like to think that the real friends are very empathetic to that, because we all have our lives going on. We all have a lot. And so it would be silly for anyone to assume that, friendships, yes, they're important, but they're likely not going to take a priority over family and a career, especially when you're in a role like yours.
Correct. Yeah.
The She's So Sweet podcast is brought to you by Client Success. Client Success is an all-in-one customer success platform to help post-sale implementation and success teams manage customers from new to renew. Through an industry-leading platform approach, Client Success gives businesses an in-depth view into customer health, product usage trends, along with churn and risk data, so that your team can not only retain customers, but help them grow as well. Whether it's managing customer onboarding workflows in shared portals, building custom health scores, tracking sentiment with NPS surveys, or doing more with less through AI and automations, Client Success gives customer success professionals a true one-stop platform to manage all aspects of the customer journey. To learn more about the industry's fastest to implement customer success platform, visit www.clientsuccess.com. That's Client Success. Simple, powerful customer success. Okay, so now I want to bring this back for a second. So you had this experience. You were so appreciative of the kind of care that you were treated with when you were navigating this very personal, traumatic experience. As the CEO now, how has the compassion that you were met with, how do you make sure that culturally you're creating an environment and a culture, a virtual field, that is also demonstrating that same level of compassion and care for the employees?
Yeah, that's really great, and something that my leadership team and I have spent a lot of time on, being really intentional on the culture that we are building here at Virtual Field, to the point where we have company values around growth and cleverness and keeping things simple and integrity. But also we've taken it one step further and written out a culture statement that goes deep into the idea of continuous improvement and accountability, but also creating a space where people feel safe, are able to give feedback, are able to focus on wellness. And that's codified in a written statement that we worked on, again, together as a leadership team and shared out with employees. I also really work to develop relationships with the team, keep an open door policy. We do have unlimited time off, so people can kind of take the time that they need. We work remotely, which gives the team members flexibility as well. So I like to think that we're building an awesome place to work where people work hard but feel supported and have what they need to be successful.
We love to hear that. I think there in my career, and I'm sure you looking back as well, there's some companies that you can reflect on that you're like, man, like that is the exact culture that I would build if I was the leader, right? Something that just like really embraced some of your core values. And then I'm sure you've also come across companies you're like, wow, that is the exact epitome of something I would like, the antithesis of something I would never build, right? It was like the worst culture ever. And so I love to hear that you're proactively being very thoughtful about that, because more people need to be working in organizations where these are priorities. And I love how your leadership team is really embracing that top down.
Yes.
Okay, so we've taken some time. We've talked about these challenges, obviously personal and professional ones there as well. But one of my favorite things to do with everybody that we have on the show is also talk about success. And I feel like, especially as women, we fail to like really think about our biggest successes and celebrate them. And so when you look back on your career, what are some of your proudest moments or accomplishments?
So in terms of personal accomplishments, one that we haven't talked about yet that actually was the experience I had right before a virtual field that I'd love to share. And when you were speaking about companies that had awesome cultures, this one fits the mold. So I was the chief revenue officer at a company called Bulletin. It was a two-sided marketplace connecting retailers to wholesale brands. The company was founded by two female founders, Alana Branston as CEO and Ali Kriegsman as COO. And they definitely created a safe, welcoming, fun environment but everybody on the team had like pure ownership over their areas, including me. And they were super supportive of me. I remember, and I still have a note that I got from them. I believe it was a holiday card that said, "We love the way you think. We love the way that you communicate. We're so happy you're on the team." So even something as simple as that, like, I still have that on my bookshelf. Getting to the success, though, when I joined Bulletin, we were at roughly 2 million in GMV. We were able to scale to 10 million in GMV and sell the company to Emerald Expo, which is a publicly traded company. And so I was able to take these founders' vision and almost like heartbeat and really put some structure around it and scale it. And that's really what I love to do as an operator, is take companies that are post-product market fit, but pre-scale, put in the right people, process, technology, data, scale them, and take them to the next level. And so I think that was a huge accomplishment for me personally, for the founders, for the investors, and certainly for the customers as well in joining a company like Emerald Expo. The customers now have access to not just Bulletin, but other in-person trade shows. So that is one success that I am happy to share.
I love to hear it. Now, something else that you've talked about, and so I know this audience is very big on like professional development and growth, and so I know that you had also been very active in the Pavilion community. Can you talk about how that played a role for you professionally?
Yeah, so that CRO job, again, so my career goal is to be a VP of growth.
As you sit here as the CEO, you're like, nope, that was my goal. That was my goal.
I was like, I love growth. I love acquisition, retention, referral, kind of the pirate metrics. I love the data behind it. I love helping customers and learning from customers. But while I was VP of growth, after we had sold, or while we were selling business.com to Centerfield Media, I actually took CRO school in Pavilion, which is Chief Revenue Officer school. I had no intention of getting a CRO job, Kristi. None.
So what was it? All right. So then what was it about that program, that course, and through Pavilion? Like, how did you land there?
How did I end up in that class? So I guess taking a step back, I am a lifelong learner. I read at least one book every month. I write a blog. I love to learn. So I was in a sales growth leadership position. Why not take a class on Chief Revenue Officer School? I'm active in the Pavilion community on Slack. They had just added some of these classes. They seemed really interesting. So it was more of, hey, I'm interested in this subject matter, then I'm taking this to achieve a career goal. So I took the class because I was interested in the subject matter. I wanted to be the best VP of growth I could be. And then while I was in that class is when I got the offer to join Bulletin as Chief Revenue Officer. I didn't ask for that title. The job at Bulletin had actually been posted as head of growth, but they met me and they liked the way that I thought. And they really wanted me to come. And so they said, we'll give you the Chief Revenue Officer title. And I said, great, let's do it.
Well, you must have been the star pupil. Like, who's going through the class? You're like, nope, I'm only midway through. We're at our midterm, but yet here I am. I got the title. Great class. Thanks, guys.
Yeah. And then I just told you the story of exiting Bulletin. Well, I really prefer to work at companies that are, again, post-project market fit, pre-scale. Selling to an Emerald Expo was an amazing experience to, go through that process and lead that process. But I don't love working at bigger companies, and I know that. So I had started to look for a job while we were in due diligence, and I actually got linked up to the virtual field hiring team through Pavilion as well. Sam Jacobs had posted, he's the founder of Pavilion. He posted, hey, I know somebody who's looking for a first-time CEO. And I was in this due diligence process. I'm like, I'm not thrilled about going to work at a large publicly traded company. I like small cap, I like mid-market. Why not throw my hat in the ring? No intention. I had no career aspiration to be a CEO, although along the way, people have said, hey, Rachel, you'd be a great CEO. But it really was not a career goal. And then 12 interviews later, I got the job as CEO. So it was the only CEO job I applied to. I really wasn't in the market for a CEO job. But I'm so honored and grateful. And it's been such a great experience because I do think holistically, growth has always been a team sport for me. Revenue has always been something that I've pulled the entire organization into. So it really was a natural next step for me.
I love that. Okay, so there was something you talked about that I have to double click into because I think so many people struggle with this, but you talked about the size of companies you prefer versus the ones that you don't. And you said you don't love working in large companies. Let's talk about the importance of identifying that in your career journey, because I think so many folks will apply to jobs and almost kind of willy-nilly, right? Especially, in this market right now where I know people are struggling to find work. And that is not lost on me that sometimes a job is a job. It's a means to feeding your family and putting a roof over your head. So I get that. I'm not dismissing that, especially right now. But let's assume all things equal, economy is thriving, everyone's growing. How did you come to find, and what was the path that you said, you know what, I've worked at this size company, I've worked at this size company. What were some of the attributes that you had to look at and assess for yourself to say, no, for me personally, moving forward, these are the types of organizations I thrive in and where I want to be?
Yeah. So I actually learned this the hard way, so to speak, at Constant Contact, where very briefly, my first role at Constant Contact was a researcher on an analytics team. And I had a very small piece of a much larger picture. And so I would do research, but then I'd also add recommendations and I'd want to talk to the marketers who were using my research. And that was honestly not encouraged. It was more like, okay, do this part of your piece of the puzzle, because the main Constant Contact business, when the company gets big, it's very structured as to who does what. It has to be. That's how big companies work. You get to specialize in a smaller slice of a larger picture, and not necessarily cross-populate or collaborate. Or if your job's research, you're not necessarily encouraged to do marketing. Cool. I told my recruiter who hired me, I was like, I really want to be challenged. And she was like, yes, you're absolutely right. And luckily there was this innovation team that they then moved me to about 6 months in, which was only 5 people. And that's where we created Constant Contact's tool for Facebook advertising. And I still did analytics, but I got to have my hands in the marketing and the product and really all aspects of the business and see the big picture. Of course, do my core responsibilities, but work a lot more collaboratively and cross-functionally. So I learned that type of environment where certainly I can work on my function, but also it's a team, and I can work on other areas of the business too, was right for me. And so since then, I've looked for companies that are in that sweet spot where pre-scale, looking for, again, somebody to bring structure, put in process, and scale. And I've tended to shy away from, when Business.com sold to Centerfield Media. It was like, okay, this is now a $300 million company. That's not going to be for me. I had the opportunity to stay there and run sales ops, but not necessarily be part of a bigger picture, leadership team, company level decisions. So I knew that's when I moved to Bulletin. Again, smaller. I'm CRO. I'm running sales, but I'm also helping Alana and Ali run the company and do strategy and think about what's next for the company and the investors. And then we sold to Emerald Expo. I had the opportunity to stay and run a couple of sales teams there, but I knew again that wasn't going to be a great fit for me. So was looking for something smaller.
It's safe to say, Rachel, that like you don't thrive in an environment where they're like, stay in your lane.
Correct.
Okay. Listen, I don't like that either. I have found that there is a size of company that I thrive in, and it's very funny because I feel like that window is very small for me because very quickly it gets too small where I'm like, oh man, this is so hard in different ways. And then there's a size that's like big, not so big, but just big enough for me to be disinterested on the work that I'm doing.
Right.
I'm a builder. So for me, it's like, I still like to have an impact and get in the weeds. Sounds like you're a get your hands dirty kind of gal too.
I am definitely roll up my sleeves, get my hands dirty. I love to build. That's a great word for it. I am a builder also. I definitely see people who have a very unique specialty thriving in a big company, but I am more of a generalist. And so I like smaller and more general types of projects.
That makes sense. And obviously, listen, it served you well to figure that out because look where you are now.
Yes.
All right. So let's segue a little bit. One of my favorite sayings is empowered women empower women. I mean, I think, I told you the story about why I started this podcast and its importance to me and to my legacy and my daughter. But I do really believe that like in order for women to thrive and be successful, we need to be lifting each other up and we need to be helping one another. So as you think about it, especially in your role, right? Like what are some of the things that you do to empower other women?
Yeah, I love this and really embrace this also. So one thing I do personally is I write a blog at rachelakrug.com where I am writing to a younger generation of women. It's typically things that I've learned or things that I'm working on myself. For example, how to give an employee feedback. I have an article on that. So that's designed to help people who are on their journey. Additionally, I've spoken at women's events like Pavilion just had a women's summit, and I was honored to speak on influence in the C-suite. And that was a great event and a great talk. In optometry, there are women's organizations. So there is a publication, Women in Optometry. They have events. And I just last week was able to attend that event and support some amazing women ODs who shared their journey to practice ownership. There is also an organization called Ophthalmic World Leaders who is committed to diversity in eye care. Women and all types of diversity. And I've recently joined that group and I'm helping them to launch their New England chapter on November 19th. So it's been amazing to get involved in those industry organizations. And then, of course, internally, like we talked about, creating that safe, welcoming environment that supports diversity, women leaders, all types of leaders at my company.
That's so amazing. I mean, especially to hear from a CEO where like, clearly you have your hands full, but you're making such an intentional commitment to making sure that others are going to be successful and learn from your journey and your experiences. And that's what we love to see. And I think that's what we all need, right? Because I think it's easy for us to be able to emulate and follow in the footsteps of those who have come before us. And so I love how you're leading out in those ways.
Yeah. And it's funny when I was coming up through and I kind of had decided that I wanted to be a VP of growth and I was looking up, to be honest, Kristi, and I think you have the same experience. I didn't really have people to look up to.
Yeah.
Whenever I look at a company page, I would maybe see a woman as a VP of marketing or a VP of HR, maybe. And, certainly I've been proactive throughout my career and reached out to people that I think are interesting and tried to make those connections. I think and hope there's more of us about a decade later than there were about a decade ago when I was coming up. And informally, I'm always happy to make time for proactive people like that as well, who see a female CEO and want to reach out and learn from me.
I love that. And I think that is something that I think is rare. We still listen, I trying to find guests for this show is also not easy. Like, you would just assume that there is a ton of people. I'll tell you that there's one role I cannot find a female CFO to get on this show. So for anyone listening, if you know a female CFO, I would love to find one who will come on and share their journey, because it's like there's just not a lot of them. And
Right.
so it's interesting also, is like I kind of do the research to find my guests and like connect with people. You know, you see a lot of women in marketing, you see a lot of women in HR, you see a lot of women in customer success, but there are like some disciplines I don't see enough in product, although I am seeing more. I don't see enough in the CEO role. I don't see enough in the CFO role. I don't see enough in the operations role. So it's like, while they're there, it is very clearly still a divide when you think about females in the C-suite.
Right.
It's not balanced. There are still different functions that definitely lean more towards females. And like, listen, maybe it's a self-fulfilling prophecy and we all gravitate towards things that are kind of more in our nature, and maybe that's why. But I still would love to see more women in different roles. That would be my goal.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
All right. So we kind of hit on this a little bit. I don't want to take too much time here, but I am always interested in this, especially as somebody who is exhausted all of the time. And I can only preface it by saying that, like, I am just a tired working mom, wife, friend, daughter, dog mom. How do you balance this, especially as a CEO, right? Like, because I always say, like, listen, I think I work hard, but I know nobody works harder than my CEO. It's his company, right? Like, the CEO is always going to put in the most amount of work. Right? They're the most committed. So you're sitting in the seat that's giving the most. You've got 2 kids. You've got this family at home. How are you? You've got friends that are kind and patient, but also that you would like to see. So how do you balance this? Or how do you figure out a way to like prioritize all of these different important aspects of your life?
Yeah, I'm going to answer this really, really honestly, and with an observation. When you read stories in the media about CEOs, I feel like it's generally male, and they generally talk about how they work all the time and they go to the gym. And they almost never talk about the fact that they have a family. Many of them do, but it's almost never mentioned in the media. So I do have a family, and I have a very loving husband who is the primary caregiver for my children.
I love that.
He has a job. He works 7 to 4 p.m. Yeah, he's been there 12 years. He's earned flexibility. So if there's a doctor's appointment, he can do it. If there's a parent-teacher conference, he can do it. So I don't have to do a lot of the day-to-day shuttle busing that comes with having children, because he's taken that on, which is amazing. And I'm so grateful. And I would absolutely not be where I am today without Ted. And I wish more people would talk about that and the support that they must have in their lives to do the jobs that they have. So definitely want to share that. Also, in terms of balance, and I think I've learned this the hard way, like making sure you take time off when you need it, take vacation. I've taken, I think it's 15 days of vacation already this year, which is awesome.
That is impressive.
Took a week off during the summer, really taking the time you need when you need to rejuvenate. You'll come back enlightened and refreshed and ready to go. So that's super important for balance. And then finally, on a day-to-day basis, I use this app called Insight Timer. Have you heard of it?
I haven't, but this is me like secretly writing this down as we're discussing this. Insight Timer. What is this?
Insight Timer, and it's a meditation app, and they will have live sessions. They have recorded sessions also. So there's meditation and yoga. And so I think my longest streak is 35 days. And so
that's impressive.
Do that daily. Of course, here and there you miss a day, but I really try to take the time to meditate, which if you haven't done it or you're just getting started on it can feel quite strange at first. But I highly recommend it as a practice to at least experiment with.
I love that. I'm definitely going to go check that out. I want to double click into something else because I cannot share this sentiment enough with you, but I think that one of my greatest professional hacks is having a spouse and a partner who supports me, who it really is just my kind of equalizer, right? The balance at home. Like, you know what I don't do? I don't do laundry. I don't do dishes. My husband does the laundry. He does the dishes, right? Like, do I clean the house? Sure. Do I do the grocery shopping? Yes. But there is a real division of labor that keeps the house running. And everything with my kid, like there's things that he does with her and there's things that I do, right? Like I kind of manage her social calendar and her sports, and he manages all of the academics and makes sure that we're on top of everything. But we have such a great system that works, but he is my biggest cheerleader. He is the one telling me I can do anything. And he is the one pushing me to go achieve things that I don't even believe I can do. And I feel like that is sometimes lost on folks, is the importance of having a partner who does support you in all facets, right? It's not just somebody who's going to be your cheerleader, but like creating this space and the time for you to prioritize what's important to you professionally as well.
For sure. It's amazing.
So it sounds like Ted is amazing. That was his name, right?
Yes, Ted is amazing.
Okay. Big shout out to Ted. We love
Thank
Ted.
you, Ted.
We love Ted. No, because I think, listen, if you are young and early and you have not selected your partner, please make that a part of your criteria as you evaluate partners for the future. Just somebody who is going to be there for you and support you in all those areas, because especially if you have career aspirations, you're going to need that help and support. So there is not women, men duties at home. I cannot stress that enough. So, okay. Well, listen, I know that we're running up on time, Rachel, and I loved our conversation. I probably could spend another 2-3 hours with you. But before we wrap up today, I would love for you to just share, what's the one thing you want to leave our listeners with?
Yeah, I would say really invest in yourself, particularly in leadership, communication, and financial skill sets. Learn what a P&L is, understand the financial backing of your business, no matter what your role is. That insight is going to go a long way. Fine-tuning your communication skills, again, no matter what your role is or what your aspiration is going to go a long way. And then the study of leadership is so fascinating. And I've been a student of leadership really I'd say since 2017, officially, and I'm always learning something new every day. There's so many great books and seminars and free resources in this area. Invest in yourself in those 3 areas, and it will go a long way no matter what you're doing.
I love that so much. Rachel, thank you so much for your time today. Obviously your journey is so inspiring. I'm excited to see what the future holds for you. I do want to check out your product. I'm interested as I go for my eye exam, if they are using it or not. And I can't wait to be like, hey, why aren't you using this? Yes. So when I go get my eyes checked in the coming weeks, I will let you know what they're up to. But for everyone listening, if you've enjoyed this episode, please rate and follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, subscribe on YouTube, and connect with me on LinkedIn. Until next time, we'll see you soon. Thanks so much. Hi guys, I want to share a bit about an organization that I support called Wednesday Women. They're on a mission to increase the visibility of executive women leaders that you should know, learn from, and be inspired by. On LinkedIn, they share the profile of 2 amazing women each week, on Wednesdays of course. And now just imagine if we all followed, amplified, and nominated the women that we want to see more of. Their initiative provides examples of women CEOs, founders, sales executives, technical leaders, and so many more. By supporting Wednesday Women, you'll see more of these professionals in your social feeds, of course, but also on stages, podcasts, and panels. If you're interested in learning more and supporting their initiative, head over to www.wednesdaywomen.org or follow them on LinkedIn.